you mentioned this risk that you're describing, of sort of what does it mean to speak out? What are the repercussions in different spaces and in different countries and different communities? In reading a little bit up on you for this conversation, there's a quote from an article that said that for you, the greatest skill about having a platform is handing over the mic. Can you describe that and what you mean by that? I think this is really interesting, and I'm just curious why you think that the greatest skill in having a platform is actually handing over the mic. How does that work for you?
Well, part of it is I know that I wouldn't be where I am if people hadn't handed the mic to me. I think of just how many people constantly inspire me. You said the name of my production company, which quite honestly, in full transparency, is something that I knew the name of my production company when I walked out of Professor West's class on Du Bois. And that became really the anchoring fact of how we decided on the name and what we represented. And
Seventh Son, yes?
So I know, yes, Seventh Son, but spelled S-U-N, because the goal is to pierce the veil. But I think of all the times in which the mic has been handed to me. And I also know that, you know, being in kind of the larger media complex as an actor, there's an added component of when I do interviews, and I'm grateful for the compliment, but a lot of the terminology is like, oh, well, you're the voice of a generation, the face of a generation. And I always feel like that's doing my generation a disservice, especially knowing that I know a lot about certain topics, but I do not know a lot about everything. And so part of being in a world in which, as a socially engaged human, I'm trying to figure out how to respond to these ongoing crises, is figuring out when I don't know what I don't know, and when to turn to people who have been grappling with a certain topic more fully. And even in production, I think that space has become even clearer. Since a lot of the work that we're doing is bringing in younger writers, bringing in people whose stories haven't been centered, and being able to actively collaborate with them, being able to help push them to whatever their next station is in their career. But that's something that I think I really inherited from my mother. If you meet her, she is so, I think, tuned in, for lack of a better phrase. And she's always exemplified what it means to hand a mic over, because she pays such astute attention to people. And so to see the way in which she can connect to somebody that we either pre-pandemic ran into an airport or had a random conversation with, and have the same level of impact with the people that she's had lifelong relationships with, is extremely inspiring. And so I feel like it's really trying to take that mentality of, how do I pay enough attention to the world around me to service it to the best of my ability, that I try and take into these other spaces.
That's really powerful.
But it's so rare, though, it seems to me, when we get a celebrity who is so rooted in a genuine humility, an undeniable precocity, but at the same time, a spiritual maturity. And so it looks like to me, you're transforming what it means to be a celebrity, especially for a generation that oftentimes is so hungry and thirsty for visibility and publicity, to be a spectacle, and to have an image that everybody smiles at. And you keep it all the way down on the ground, keep it funky and human, and yet still be able to allow your gifts to flow from your soul to the world. I mean, that is just a magnificent example, though.
It's really remarkable. I mean, you know, I know very little about Hollywood, but the little bit I've seen, it is not for the faint of heart. You know, I mean, it's voracious, and you know, I can't even begin to describe it. It's actually terrifying. It seems like it'd be a place where you would just basically lose your mind if you didn't work exceptionally hard at trying to keep it. And so, I mean, you know, it's true. So for you to be so poised and, you know, because, you know, you could be, there's a lot of ways you could go. You could be a self-righteous, you know, I know a lot, I'm a nerd, and I'm going to make sure you know everything that I've learned to prove to you that I'm a nerd. You don't do that, right? You're just reading and learning, and you constantly focusing on what you didn't read yet, which is the sign of a true nerd, by the way.
Yes.
That's all you worried about, all the books you didn't read. But just to do it with such grace, and also to still be, you know, interested in questions of joy and beauty, and using your modeling and your role as an actress to basically to avoid that binary between, you know, sort of pleasant, beautiful things on the one hand and sort of, you know, protest and sort of a scowl on the other. You figured out really how to combine these things in a joyful way that's also still very committed. I mean, I think that's very, very difficult. Did you have any sort of support network in Hollywood that, or do you have one? I'm just going to hope that, I know your mom is obviously significant, but there's also just Hollywood in general. Is there a support network that's been helpful to you?
Most definitely. I mean, of course, I think my family is the core group. We've made everything a family activity. And so whether it be my first day on set, my brothers always come visit, and vice versa. Even my littlest 12-year-old brother will charge me $25 a week if I want to run lines with him. But he is, but you know, as a whole, I'm pretty lucky for the time that I think I entered Hollywood, because I feel like there are a lot of people, especially in our brown and black community, who've been doing the important work of trying to get rid of concepts of competition and such. And so I entered at a time in which I feel like I very much entered with a lot of uncles and aunties. And so that was really great. Even turning to the Blackish environment, Kenya Barris, the creator of Blackish and then of Grownish, I think he saw a producer in me before I did. You know, he was the one who said, like, this is your next step, and had been playing with, like, well, how do we get you into the Writers Guild or the Directors Guild? How do we introduce you to these experiences? He called me first when we were building the Grownish Writers Room and said, well, what writers do you want to hire? So I got to make the first reach out to the people that inspired me. And so I think things like that were just extremely impactful. And I think even turning to the people that I haven't directly worked with, I think of even whether it be Angela Bassett and Courtney Vans, who are incredible artists in their own right, and the level of support they showed me in as people that were extremely academic and creatives, in helping me as I was going on this own journey of figuring out, okay, I have a full-time job and I have a deep desire to learn, and how do I fulfill both? And so to be able to turn to the people around me and for them to be able to have those really open, honest conversations is something that I really am grateful for. And it's helped us stay sane because we have each other. And you're absolutely right. Hollywood is an interesting machine. And I think the only thing that keeps me grounded is that I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist. And so it's fun because I'm like, I'll just go play in this imaginary world.
Interesting machine that doesn't really exist.
Right. I tell you, it can eat you alive, but it's not even there, right? Dear Tightrope family, we are joining Patreon. We're partnering with Patreon because they are empowering creators to maintain independence, thereby allowing us to offer you access to weekly exclusive content. By joining, you will gain access to special opportunities to engage with us as we share what we're reading, offer behind-the-scenes clips from our episodes, and ask you for your input around what we should focus on next. We want to express our sincere gratitude for consideration in joining us on the Tightrope and becoming part of our Patreon community. Thank you for helping us to maintain our creative freedom on this righteous journey as we produce and distribute content of high integrity. Together, we can amplify truth, cultivate hope, and work to create a just world. Thank you, and stay strong.
My blessed Tightrope family, we are delighted to work with our brothers and sisters at Patreon in order to preserve our independence of mind, to preserve our free spirits, and most importantly, to preserve our quest for truth and for beauty and for goodness. Please be with us on this journey. you.